YouTubers, my name is Chris and welcome to week 4 of the 50 books for 2019 series. This week we're going to be taking a look at M. Scott Peck's The Road Less Travelled. Let's dive in. Now, I received this book as a Christmas present from my mother. I did request the book, but I wasn't really sure what it was about. I'd heard that it was a bit of a favourite among spiritual seekers, so I thought, I'll give this book a go. But I didn't. The point I'm trying to make here is I didn't really have any reference point for what this book was going to be about. So when I did, start to read it, I was really shocked and surprised by the content. M. Scott Peck is someone who's been a therapist for many years, and his work has been sort of transformative for many lives. And now he's distilled the work into a easily digestible book. The first 20, but I'll admit the first 20 pages or so, I was a little bit slow on the material. Maybe the fact that I'd been reading a book a week has sort of taken its toll on me by now, but I felt that there was something, jarring with the content. I wasn't quite getting into it. But after about 20 or 30 pages, I really started to enjoy this book. It was a massive change from what I first initially thought about the book to my ending impressions. What struck me about the book initially was actually the contents page. There was a lot of different skills that I was seeing that were things that I wanted to develop in myself. I really wanted to work on delaying gratification, to be more responsible, to be more self-sacrificing. And so I was very keen on getting into these chapters and really having a look at what it was that M. Scott Peck had to say about these things. So for me, it was a real journey through the chapters, especially considering how little I knew going into the book. It was just as if reading something recommended by no one in particular, but just from me hearing about it. And so I got stuck in and really enjoyed myself. Really came up with some insights that really helped me in my personal life, and since I've recommended the book to a friend and have given it to her, and she's currently reading that at the moment. So I think overall it was an interesting read. It was an interesting read, and I think it's the kind of book that you can give away to people because it is so intrinsically geared towards helping people that I can't help but feel giving these kind of books away are almost an act of love. I feel that one of the greatest things you can do for someone is to give them a book, or to help them to read. If they are a young person, for example, teaching them to read, getting them into books. It is a minority occupation, reading it, and I personally would like to see it become a majority of people who are reading, so not just a small minority. But I've been since thinking about the whole non-fiction element of the 50 books for 2019 series, and I do feel like I'm missing out a little bit on fiction books. So I think next year I will do a 50 books for 2020, but with fiction. So it will be basically the same rules, but I wanna broaden my palette, because what I'm finding as I'm reading a lot of these non-fiction books, and especially in the same area, so a lot of the books I've been reading you could class as self-help. Now, I wouldn't personally call all of the books I've read self-help, but if it had to be defined in a category, I would say that's the one they we put in. And so self-development itself is nothing wrong with it, but at the same time I think it's missing an element, and that element is often drama, human drama, and that's what I'm kind of looking to get into when I do my 50 books of 2020 with novels instead of non-fiction books. But anyway, back to this book. It was interesting and difficult at the beginning. Very difficult because the the cases that Peck talks about are real life cases. So he is obviously protecting the names and the identities of the people who are in this, but what he's trying to do is give you as honest a look into their lives as he possibly can. So what I found quite difficult about the book initially was how close to home some of these stories were. So, you know, you hear stories about people whose relationships were failing and who are having difficulty communicating with their partners, for example, and losing their jobs, and just in general just not fulfilling their potential, and that is quite frightening to read about in other human beings, because if you recognise it in someone else, then it means you must recognise it in yourself. And so for me, I found it difficult reading these you know, these people's stories, because it made me take a look at my own life and sort of think, well, where am I making mistakes? Where am I sabotaging my own happiness and sabotaging the life I want to lead? So it's a reflective book, a very, very self-reflective book, and a very I don't know what you'd call it. Just it's for the seekers, and that's a good way of putting it, because people who are out here to improve themselves, you know, who aren't just happy with the daily grind, who aren't just happy going on living their life as they have been. They're trying to get something more. They're trying to develop the self and even that's quite a funny term, because it implies that there's someone else, you know, myself. It implies that there's you and then the self. So, you know, even that's just a bad bit of language. But people trying to improve themselves is it's the key. It's the key for a lot of these books. You know, they're trying to tap into something that you in yourself can hear. There's maybe a yearning in your heart or some kind of urge to go further, to be more. And I think that can be supported by reading a lot of these books. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm reading these books, because I want to learn. I want to be able to you know, when I pass away, when I die, I want to be able to say and look myself in the eye and say, you did a good life, you did a good job, you know, you did everything that you could do. And so I think the key to that it's not always just in books, but I think the key to learning about how to be a good human being, I think books have a big role to play in teaching mankind how to live and how to be responsible and really shine and be the best that they can be. The first chapter is all about discipline, and Peck really drills down on that discipline is needed for love to flourish properly. So good communication, loving partners are all a byproduct of discipline. So you can't have one without the other. So Peck's idea here is that we can't just love, not freely, of course. He's not suggesting that we can't love freely, but not without a sense of discipline and without a sense of knowing your own worth and knowing your own boundaries prior to being, you know, to connecting with someone else. You may sort of be asking yourself, why would I listen to another bloke tell me how I should love other people or how I should love myself? And I can kind of understand that argument, but at the same time, you need to sort of become aware that there are people out there who have seen a lot of the human condition over their time, and Peck's one of them. Peck's one of these people who have spent the last 15 years in clinical psychotherapy, and he's been examining people, he's been learning, and he's been growing with them. And so for me, I feel as though Peck is an incredibly good guide through the therapeutic way of learning to love and learning to be disciplined and to really just flourishing in our own environments and in our own relationships. In the third section, Peck turns his attention to the religious and the mystical to help us answer questions about love that can't be answered socio-biologically. Now, Peck claims that one of Peck's claims is that everyone has a religion. Now, that may come across as quite a contentious point to some people, especially people who consider themselves to be fervent atheists. They might say, "Well, no, I don't believe in religion. I believe that there is no God. In fact, then to suppose that I have a religion is ridiculous." But what Peck asserts in this book is that any system of belief that helps you understand the world is a religion. And so by that very definition, we are all operating under a religion, whether that be religion passed to us by our parents, by our teachers. Maybe it's something we've invented ourselves. Maybe it's something that we believe in and no one else does. In the final section of the book, Peck turns his attention to grace. Now, grace and serendipity, according to Peck, are a common phenomena, but not just that, they're also a predictable phenomena in some cases. Peck recounts many instances of many stories, of people who have had serendipity enter their lives at just the right time and change the outcome of an event. And I think we all kind of know someone, or maybe have had it happen in our own lives. I mean, I personally know someone who claims to have been in a car accident, and just before the accident happened, a voice told her, she heard a voice saying, "Stop the car," and she slammed on the brakes, and another car came out and nearly hit them. And so, if she hadn't have heard the voice and stopped the car, she would have been in quite a serious accident. And that's someone I know telling me, just an incident that happened to them. So I think we all have this understanding that serendipity exists and this experience of it. We've all felt that luck has just sort of lined itself up nicely for us, or something has just clicked perfectly. Now, of course, the inverse of that is it happening, to negative effects, so freak accidents happening. And Peck goes into quite a lot of detail. I won't touch on it just now, but he goes into a lot more detail on that. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. And next week we're going to be taking a look at The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters.